Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside News with Dale Matthews, but not with Mike Jones tonight. The problem is that Mike can just somehow not connect via the internet. This had to happen eventually because I think this is show number 369 in a row, something like that. Eventually, it was going to happen where one or the other of us was not going to be able to connect. It's not our fault. There's nothing we can do about it. And so I delayed the show as long as I can. And after talking with Mike, I'm going to do another story, and I'm flying solo today, which is just about right because we're going to be doing a story about what in the world is up at the airport. Been meaning to do this story for a while anyway, because every once in a while somebody says to me, I don't understand what's going on there. What's all this stuff that's happening? Why is Larry Graves on television and why is he in the newspaper and saying I want to spank people? He wants to spank people. But first, I'm just going to tell you a little bit of news. The other kind of news. This is going to be in-depth tonight. Sorry that we couldn't give you the footage of Herman Bertschiger and the footage of Jeff Merkley, and we went everywhere yesterday. I was in 6 meetings, and we videotaped all of them, and we're going to bring you that, and I guess we're going to bring that to you tomorrow. Sorry for those who turned in to see some of the news based on that, but there are others who would like to a little bit more information about what's happening with the airport. Maybe you know all about that, and so good night. But if you don't know the entire story behind that, I'm going to roll back a little bit for you to put it in context for those who don't know the context. I just wanted to let you know that today at the Association of ONC Counties, they decided they didn't even need a vote. They just decided by popular acclaim that Simon Hare would continue to be their vice president despite his recent problems. And a couple of citizens went up to testify and say, we really think that you ought to reconsider this, but that didn't get very far. And they felt that that in the words of one of them, that Simon Hare is the right man for the job. There you go. So we will cover more of that and what Senator Merkley had to say yesterday and what Herman Bertschiger, our state senator, had to say yesterday and all kinds of yesterday's news, but I'm going to roll back just a little further now. So as I said, people occasionally say to me, what's happening at the airport? This doesn't make any sense to me. And why are we seeing the airport manager, who is an at-will employee, not an elected official, just another guy working for the government, why is he all over the newspaper and television saying bad things about the ignorant people? And he did say that in the Illinois Valley. Well, I'll start off from the beginning of what I know and try to bring you up to speed about who the characters are that are involved in this. Since Larry Graves took over as airports manager, we're one of the few counties that has 2 airports in our county. He took over from a fellow that was really hard to get along with, and that guy was actually put on a improvement policy, or they were going to have to say goodbye to him, because he literally was keeping a blacklist, a enemies list of people who would come to the airport and then question their county government and question him. And the jewel of the Ivy Airport still is the Smoke Jumpers Museum. And this guy was giving them a lot of trouble. I mean, they were getting down to the point where we're saying how tall the grass needs to be when it's trimmed, and a lot of really tiny details that didn't have anything to do with the work they were doing to volunteer to reestablish kind of a museum there dedicated to the smoke jumpers who used to be there. This guy, Alex Grassi, was finally shown the door. And then in came a very large replacement, Larry Graves. My first negative encounter with Larry Graves, because what I know about the guy is that I'd gone down to something he established called Airport Days. Nice. And having grown up near an airport and having been involved with aviation-related things all of my life, my mother worked for the Air Force for some time, and my dad worked for Rocketdyne, which was one of the outfits that made the Atlas rockets for satellites and military use and etc. I remember living in North Edwards, near Edwards Air Force Base, and seeing these planes fly over all the time, and it was exciting to see these experimental planes fly over. So I've always been interested in aviation. I thought I was going to end up working at NASA. Anyway, so I went down to the airport days the first time they had them and towed along a camera to see what was up and anticipating there'd be a lot of interesting things to see. And one of the things I saw, which was pretty interesting to me, was a radio controlled jet aircraft. Right. And very fast. And I thought, well, I'll just talk with the guy that made this. This is really interesting. Radio controlled jet aircraft. And while I was talking with the guy, I didn't bring this up. He said, well, the only thing which is, I got to paraphrase here, although you can watch the tape of him saying this because, of course, we put it out. He says, the only thing that's a little odd is that, we're flying fairly close to people here. And this is, if anything goes wrong, and it's his own invention, his own, assembly. If anything goes wrong, it's going to have a scale explosion, and there's going to be real flames. And a number of other people from the airport came over, and was putting words in his mouth. Whatever he wanted to say is fine with me. And they came over, and they were pilots there, and they said, yeah, this is seems a little strange. It's kind of like a guided missile, Okay, well, one hopes that the guidance wouldn't stop. And so they talked about that a little bit. And okay. So I thought, well, that's kind of interesting that the guy that made it is questioning whether or not this is really the right place for this. So we posted that. I posted that as, here's the question the guy had. Well, Larry Graves didn't like that. Okay. I guess I can understand. And he kind of blamed me for, you're looking for bad stories. Well, occasionally we do, but I wasn't coming looking for anything. This is the thing that the guy said, and I certainly wasn't putting words in his mouth. So the reaction from Larry Graves was kind of strange because at that time, there was something called the Apple Rogue News. Apple, I don't know why Apple, but the Apple Rogue News. And it was put on by a couple of local fellows who felt, well, maybe we could have a kind of a free newspaper thing that would be distributed to everybody in the county, and it would include some stories that you don't normally see. Hey, I'm for that. I mean, we wouldn't be here unless if there was a real newspaper in this town that was really reporting the news. Things are slowly changing there, and that's good. So these guys felt, Apple Rogue Times, that they were going to do that. And so they did one issue that went out to everybody, and it seemed pretty popular with a lot of people, and they got some advertising. Didn't work out so well right after that first one. And they ran into some problems with funding and, were they really going to get the kind of advertising they wanted? This has a relationship with airport. You'll see. And so the head guy there, the editor, said, Dale, you're doing all these videos and a lot of people are looking at them. Can we include those on our website? And I said, yeah, sure. And all we'll do is we'll just link to them. And I said, sure, no problem. Well, people may come more to the website. Yeah, sure, that's fine. Well, and so thank you very much for that. I said, yeah, just, give me attribution or whatever, this was done by Dale Matthews, no problem. And feel free. And hopefully more people will come to your website because we were doing very, very well and growing and growing, growing. We're much bigger now. Well, apparently this fellow was a relative of Larry Graves. Really? And so he went to him and he said, this Dale Matthews is really a bad guy. And he was here and he was doing this and doing that. And that wasn't true. I didn't do those things. And he was wearing a uniform. No, I wasn't. And he was doing this and this and this. And you've got to get rid of this guy. It was very strange. So that guy decided that I was no longer going to be a correspondent for them. I wasn't really anyway. I mean, they sent me a kind of a press badge, but I don't wear a press badge. I don't need one. You see me walking along with a camera, what am I? I don't know, a guy with a camera, or is he press? It didn't make any difference to me. And then the really weird part about it was that guy, it seemed like almost like a vendetta based on just a little story. What's the problem? He issued a press release saying, Dale Matthews is no longer representing us. Yeah, hardly anybody knows who you are in the first place. Plus, I wasn't going to wear the press badge. I was just loaning you footage. Big deal. And then that goofy sneak preview thing, big Dale Matthews. What are you doing? Who cares whether I'm working for these guys or working for them? I'm not making any salary. What difference does it make? Okay, that was just strange, right? And so it was like, what in the world is going on here? It seemed like a little too much retribution for such a small thing. I mean, I was noticing that when Larry Graves said thousands of people came, well, I knew that there weren't thousands of people there, but, it's a little hyperbole, big deal. Oh, thousands and thousands. No, no, hundreds and hundreds, but not thousands and thousands. Whatever, it makes you happy. Go ahead and say so. Well, this Larry Graves fellow got in a real partnership with Cheryl Walker. Yeah, right. And Cheryl was enamored of the airport and was saying things to people like, "Well, the airport's the heart of the community." Yeah. Well, no, the Boys and Girls Club is the heart of the community. No, the library is the heart of the community. No, the 6th Street Baptist Church is everything is the heart of the community. The big statue of the caveman is the heart of the community. Dutch Brothers is the heart of the community. Everybody thinks they're the heart of the community. So Cheryl Walker's, one of the things she said many times is the airport is vital to our economic growth. It is. And it's the heart of the community. A little bit of hyperbole again, but if it makes you happy, just go ahead and say so. So that was just a kind of an odd beginning. And then came Manor Development over at the Illinois Valley Airport. There were a lot of us who thought, well, it's just odd that we're talking about flying drones over our county. I mean, even if it means jobs, do we really welcome the presence of drones flying over our county? And make no mistake, this wasn't just a place that said that they were going to manufacture them or have somebody do it or test them. They had indicated that they want to base drones flying out of the Illinois Valley Airport. So I thought, well, okay. I mean, drones can be kind of cool and also kind of creepy, but what would they do if they were flying in our county? I get the idea if they're going to make them there or if they're going to test them there, but what would they do if they were flying out of there? What would they be doing? Well, they said one of the things that they could do is that they could fly over local farms. Now, we're talking about the Illinois Valley here. So what kind of things do you think they would find on local farms? Yeah, well, you already know. And so, they could also be used to investigate, to, have some kind of special stuff on board to figure out what kind of crops people are growing. Hello? I mean, this is a show looking at politics in the area. What do you think they're talking about? Come on now. And the folks out there, they weren't really surprised by the idea that perhaps someone might like to fly over their land and find out exactly what kind of crops they're growing in the Illinois Valley. Right. Okay. And it could potentially be used for things like assessing people's property values, and it could be used for this, it could be used for that. Yeah, and this was not too long or right around the same time where Cheryl Walker had been pressing for the 4 junk ordinances that were going to keep track of what kind of waste people had on their property and who needs to go in and regulate them, and were they going to give them fines for having junker cars and stuff, and how much easier would it be to go ahead and fly a drone over someone's house, and I mean you could touch it right down on their property or fly a few feet over their property and say, hey, look, there's junk cars and stuff. Who knows what it could be used for? So that made me a little bit nervous, but I still thought, okay, look, it's economic development. The IV needs economic development. Now, I'm telling you this whole story, not because I'm super trying to bore you, which I may be, but because people ask from time to time, well, what's the story behind this? I don't really understand the background. This is a big backgrounder. So I thought still, okay, it's kind of cool. And maybe we could get some high-tech stuff there, and that's nice. But there were a number of people in the community in IV. There's always going to be some people. There's always at least 20%. Yay, boy, this is the best thing ever. And there's always a 20%. No, I don't want anything. That's in between people who go, well, okay, let's look into this. And maybe this is real because it's going to, according to the commissioners in one of their little backroom meetings, it's going to create 100 jobs. Okay, that's pretty cool. Probably a lot of the jobs would have been brought out in to the area from outside, but still, I mean, if you bring in 100, even if all of them were brought in from outside, they got to live somewhere, and that would maybe lift up part of the community. And there's got to be some other kinds of things to do. I'm not sure that they'd have to put another person on at the gas station to fill up their cars like they were going to do with 90 full-time jobs from putting a plaque on a rock, which would indicate that they would have to have a lot more employees at the gas station, of course. That didn't happen, but maybe this could. Okay, so good thing. So some of us were trying to find out more information. Who is this Manor Development? Well, as it turns out, they had a bit of a reputation, kind of pluses and minuses in the Ivy area. Some people said, well, they tried to do a lot of things, but didn't work out. And others said, hey, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. And they promised this and they promised that. Didn't happen. I don't know who's right. Okay, so maybe you do, but we heard both and reported both. So, but we tried to find out more about who were these people who were doing this. Well, one of the things we found out right away, this kind of set off an alarm bell with me, is that the fellow that owned Manor Development was one of the biggest contributors to Simon Hare's re-election campaign. Oh, okay. Now, Dan Mancuso of the IV News says, that's totally wrong. That's totally wrong. No, Dan's wrong. He was one of the biggest contributors, not Dan, but this guy was one of the biggest contributors to Simon Hare's re-election campaign. Larry Graves, the airport's manager, was tasked, according to the commissioners, with fully vetting Manor Development. Well, there's some speculation, partly by me, that fully vetting meant, oh, biggest contributor, huh? Okay, you're now fully vetted. I don't know. But it turns out in retrospect, that wasn't very fully vetted after all. I think what was happening is similar to what was happening with this Mark Von Holly guy that came in and was convinced the commissioners that they ought to give him a whole bunch of money for coming up with economic development plans for the county. Now they're handing off to somebody else, as you know. And I think what he was doing, that fellow, was he was saying to Josephine County, well, I've already got to deal with Jackson County, and saying to Jackson County, well, it looks like I've got to deal with Josephine County, and saying to Medford, it looks like I got to deal with Grants Pass. See, if you do enough of those, then maybe it looks like you've got a lot of deals and someone will bite. This recently happened with the new firm that's been chosen by Grants Pass City and the county when they chose Echo Northwest. Echo Northwest is an outfit that where when the city council, Grants Pass City Council, took their vote, they said, well, we're not quite sure that we want to do business with these guys. So the city manager, there's a connection here. You'll see it's Cheryl Walker once again. The city manager said, well, the news is that our partners, the county, have already said yes. Oh. So that convinced some of the Grants Pass City Council members, okay, our partners, I mean, yeah, we're in on this together and they've already said yes, maybe we should. Well, the vote even then ended up being split right down the middle. Now, the mayor, instead of saying, well, because we can't quite make up our mind, maybe we ought to study this a little more. No, he jumped in and said, we're definitely going to do it. And he was the tiebreaker. He could have gone either way. Then it turns out that the county had not done this. So I asked the city manager, where did you get the information that you told that you should have checked it out before you told them, because it ended up affecting the vote? Where did you get that information? Cheryl Walker. So at the county commissioners meeting where I mentioned this, she didn't blame the Courier for carrying the story, which was false. She didn't blame the city council for carrying the story, for following through with the story and voting, which is false. She blamed me. Blame me. I had nothing to do with it. Well, she didn't like that. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is occasionally what'll happen is you come to a conclusion because someone else has done it. And if you can do a thing where someone has done it and someone has done it and someone has done it, that makes it more likely that maybe you're going to do it too, because everybody's getting on board, as the county commissioners are always insisting that we do. You're out of control media. What's in control media? Under your thumb? On board? We don't want to be on board. And until just recently, the Daily Courier was absolutely on board. and talk with Dan Mancuso. He told me he doesn't want to do a story one time that was definitely news because maybe his advertisers wouldn't like it. He denies that, but that's what he said. And so too bad for Dan Mancuso. Anyway, so this looked like it was sort of a stack of cards where if Manor Development can get these guys to do it and these guys and these guys, then maybe, oh, look, we've got a place at an airport and it's kind of out of the way. And why don't you come and join us? Now, in retrospect, it really does look like that's what they did because they couldn't pull any of it together. They said, well, we're not really drone manufacturers, which we found out that they weren't because we were thinking, who are these guys and are they developing drones? No, apparently not. Apparently what they were doing is they were here saying at the IV airport, we have a facility. And once they have a facility, then maybe they can attract people to come here and do all kinds of things. Why? They're going to shoot a major motion picture here. They are? Yeah, well, all kinds of things are possible. They are? So we thought, okay, let's look into this even further, besides the thing about Manor Development. I hope this is interesting for you. It is the background on this. And so there were a couple of ladies, senior ladies, who tried to get in touch with Manor Development and get more information directly from them. And they found this kind of interesting because the local address that they put down for this happened to be in the same office as Jim Frick. Yeah, you know, the real estate guy. Okay. And so they went down to that office and they said, gee, we're hoping to find Manor Development. And when we try to call them, I tried too. And when we tried to get them on the phone at their 3 international headquarters, no one ever answers the phone. You know, it just makes you a little leery. Wait a minute. They've got 3 international headquarters. Yes, international. And they don't even have an answering machine. There's nobody there to answer the phones at 3 international offices. What size is this business and what does it do? There's not even an answering machine. That just seemed a little suspicious. So they went down to Jim Frick's office and the secretary there was, okay, well, we can take you to a room where you can get them on the phone. Okay, that's a little bit odd, but all right. And so they went into this room and they picked up the phone and they were connected with this guy, Larry Osborne, who is the head of Manor Development. They said, just got a couple of questions about, you know, the kind of business you do. And the guy was real offish, which seems strange because, of course, you would think he wants positive relations with the community. And he would talk to press people or maybe a couple of concerned citizens, especially these nice older ladies. He said, well, he kind of gave him an evasive answer. And they said, well, one of the things that we've heard is that you sometimes work with the military. Is that true? Well, now he got real huffy. No, wait a minute. What's the problem? So you work with the military every once in a while. Okay, that's great. It's good, isn't it? And he ended up hanging up on him. That just seems a little odd. And as we've often said on our show here, isn't that right, Mike? He's not here to answer, but it's true. If something just seems a little bit odd, maybe you ought to look into it just a little bit more. So Manor Development made a deal with Larry Graves and with Cheryl Walker, mostly with those two, that they were going to pay a certain amount by a certain date and that they were going to build all kinds of stuff and it was going to be great for the county. Okay. Well, they didn't make their payment. All right, the county commissioner said, we're going to give them more time. All right, I do have some questions about who these guys are, but give them some more time. And they gave him more time and more time and more time and more time. They weren't doing it. And Larry Graves says, well, I'm not spending any money on this. Don't worry about it. But I'm on the phone with them almost every day. You're not spending any money on this, but you're on the phone with them every day? That would seem like some expenditure of your time. Right after the county commissioner said, yes, we're going to sign this contract, the next day, Larry Graves was in a meeting, a little back room, and he says, you know, there's a lot of work to do with this contract with Manor Development. Okay, say the commissioners. And I've got a couple of people working out of both airports, and they're both going to be just really running hard to get things done. Okay, I'm not quite sure what kind of things done. What did they do now? Well, they sweep up. One of the main things that they do is they sweep up all that the dirt and rocks and stuff that are bad for aircraft off of the airport runways. Okay, and so, but they're going to be doing a lot more things because of manner development. Yeah. So I'm not asking for a raise for them, but we're going to need to double the amount of time that they work. They're both now working half time. I'm going to need them working full time right away. Okay, say the county commissioners, they're now working full time. So more money spent. Now, after that, the commissioner said, no money was spent on this at all. Okay, now you've got the manager of the airport saying he's on the phone with them every day. And then it came down to once a week and probably once every 2 weeks, that kind of thing, ramping down as they're not paying the bill as they said they would. And you've got these two guys that are now full-time instead of half-time. Don't full-time employees get some kind of benefits? I don't know. One would think so, wouldn't you, working for the county? And so these guys now, and so the big benefit of all this for Larry Graves is, look, he's got his two full-time guys. Now, what are they doing? There's no manner development there. They're not doing anything there. What are these guys doing in preparation for manner development? Are they doing anything? And since the manner development deal broke down, why are the guys still full-time? Are they sweeping up full-time? They're doing other things full-time? Why, they're very busy, says Cheryl Walker. Doing what? Hey, on to the next question. So I asked Keith Heck. I asked Cheryl Walker at an airport board meeting, when is it going to be time for these guys to roll back? Wait, I can't believe you're asking these kinds of questions. Okay, so next day, I saw Keith Heck at a meeting. They have him 4 times a year in IV. And I said, I just have one question. Yeah, what's your question? And I said, this. And sure, well, that's already been answered. It hadn't been answered. And Keith said, well, since it's already been answered, and he was, going like this to me. Hey, wait a minute. When are you going to roll back these guys? They're not doing anything more than they were before. Why did they get the double salary? What's up with that? And you said it didn't cost anything, and it has cost something. It still hasn't cost anything. Yeah, whatever. So this created a kind of a negative impression among the residents of the Illinois Valley. They had kind of a feeling, and maybe it's just one of those feelings that's just, all wrong, that something was being jammed down their throat, that they were being asked to accept something with very little behind it. Well, in that case, it was pretty much the case. And they were being made promises by the airport's manager rather belligerently. Oh, I wasn't belligerent. Yes, you were. And Cheryl Walker, no, I was always kind. No, you weren't kind. You were rather belligerent about it too. These people out there, they just don't know what's good for them. No. They're not doing what you tell them to do, but they don't have to, because they're the boss, not you, in my opinion. Public servants, thank you very much. So right around this same time, just a little bit more background on this, so much background. There was a fellow out at the Grants Pass Airport that had acquired another hangar. He's got a couple hangars that he works with. And he was dismayed to find that he was paying for more footage than he actually got, which is somewhat similar to the idea if you've got a 3-bedroom apartment, so maybe you don't have an apartment, but if you've got a 3-bedroom apartment and you're paying for a 4-bedroom apartment, why would you do that? And so he went to, because it's part of his contract, to the airport's manager, Larry Graves, and said, what's up with this? It's time to negotiate a contract. It says in my contract, I can negotiate. I'd like to come and negotiate with this. Now, I know exactly what was said, but I can't play that tape here for you because I think the guy made a mistake and he recorded it without telling Larry Graves he was recording it. That's not ethical. It may be illegal, but it's not ethical. When it was done, he said, now I was recording this. And Larry Graves said, I don't effing this and effing that. I don't care what effing you do. Okay. So, but that's not really good enough for me personally. All right. But I know what was said. I know exactly what was said. And when the guy approached Larry Graves, he was meek and mild. The guy was, not Larry. And he said, and I'd like to talk about this. Well, you're trying to F me and F this and F that. Hey, wait a minute. The guy says, well, hold on a second. I should be able to negotiate this because it says in my contract, well, you're trying to F and F you and F this and hey, wait a minute. So The guy called me and he said, what do you think I ought to do? And I said, well, I think you ought to come to a weekly business. First of all, you need to contact the guy and say, why would you do this? Well, he already got his effing answer. Okay. I said, next you need to do is talk with his liaison, which is Cheryl Walker, and say, hey, what's up with this? Well, he got the big brush off from her. Like, hopefully in the future, we won't have to deal with problems like yours ever again. It's part of this imperial commission that we have. So he said, what should I do next? And I said, well, you could come to the weekly business session and you could tell the commissioners, because maybe the other two don't know, and everybody else, how this guy treated you, because it just doesn't seem right that just some county employee would act that way towards you. Who is this guy anyway? He said, yeah, I'm a little reluctant to do that because he's well known for retaliation. Is that true? Is he well known for retaliation? I don't know, but I understand there's a possibility there could be, and this administration is well known for retaliation. Yeah, buddy. And so in my experience with Larry Graves from that goofy thing with the jet deal was, yeah, that's the kind of guy that he is. So, for example, I'll go on the Bill Meyer show every Monday at 6:30, and this guy will sometimes send in an email or whatever and say, that Dale Matthews is all wrong about this, that, or the other thing, criticizing the commissioners. Wait a minute. What does that have to do with the airport's manager? It's just who he is. That's what he likes to do. Okay. So whenever Bill tells me about that, I go, well, he's a county employee. Why doesn't he just do his job? But, everybody is entitled to their opinion. So anyway, he thought maybe there would be retaliation. And I said, well, it's up to you, because you seem to have two choices. One is you can put up with it, and if you think that people ought to be treated that way, and the other is you could speak up and risk retaliation. What do you want to do? So he got up at the weekly business session and he said what he had to say, but it was kind of meek and he didn't say very much. And he came back to me and he says, please, would you say something? So I had something else to say, but I got up and I told them the story of what had happened. And I said, when Larry Graves, the airport's manager, said F this and F that, and Keith Heck says, we will not tolerate that kind of language. I just said the letter F. Yeah, we won't tolerate. I said, what do you think is worse, saying the letter F or the full word that this guy said? Why would you allow an employee of the county to do this kind of thing? Well, you already know the answer, because that's who these guys are. Because they don't like us, they don't care for us, and they make fun of us, and they call us names, and it wasn't that much worse than what Keith Heck had called me and others. So Cheryl Walker lit in after that. Well, I talked with the guy and I explained to him, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like, well, wait a minute, but you didn't solve the problem, did you? Well, we know she didn't solve the problem, because the next time this guy saw Larry Graves, he said, well, I know I heard you did this and F you and F this and that. Hey, apparently that talk that she had with Larry Graves didn't do any good, did it? Because the guy was still talking that way. I don't think that's proper. Maybe some of you do, but I doubt it. So it didn't do any good to go to the commissioners, and the guy never got the deal that he thought that he deserved. They asked him to come in and talk to them privately, which he did, and then they handed him his head. Okay, we're not going to do any of this thing, or there's going to be no negotiation. It says in the contract negotiation, there's no negotiation. Really? So it's not the first time, but there's no one stepping forward to say it. So if you don't step forward, then we can't report it. Now this thing comes up with this helicopter outfit. Everybody at the Ivy Airport that showed up said they think Erickson Aviation is a great firm. They did not say that there's something wrong with Erickson Aviation. They used to be called Erickson Aircrane. They did not say that. And nobody had any problems at all with the wonderful work that Erickson does to help out when there are fires in the Illinois Valley or anywhere around here, because they have a helicopter and they get involved. Everybody likes that. The helicopters fly over, they make a lot of noise, but they know that when these helicopters are there making noise, they're taking water off or whatever off to the fire in order to help put it out. Thank you very much. And I think to a single person, everyone said, that's very good. The problem with the Erickson Aircrane that we're talking about here, according to some people, and not just residents of the Illinois Valley, it's the loudest helicopter in the world. Louder than a Russian helicopter? Yeah, apparently so. Okay. So Joseph Rice says, oh, no, it's a wonderful helicopter. Well, maybe so, but I'm not sure I'd want it flying over my house a couple of hours a week. Okay. When helicopters are under a load, a heavy load, a maximum load, they're going to make more sound. And there's no muffler to put on the helicopter's engine because it's the rotors that are making the noise. Now, according to some, I don't know what all the facts are. I'm just telling you what I know. According to some, it's over the threshold of okay for your hearing. It can cause permanent ear damage. So can rock and roll, but you don't listen to it several times a week with headphones, probably. What? What are you saying? Yeah. So there were some residents out in the Illinois Valley that said, we think that this might not be good for the Illinois Valley, not because we don't like helicopters, because they come in and out of here every fire season, not because we have anything against Erickson, but because this may be damaging. And if they're going to put a base here and train on the carrying of heavy loads, maybe that's not the best fit for what they perceive as a bedroom community. It's not that they don't want any economic development at all, but can we pick and choose? Is that possible? Well, this looked like it was headed towards strike two for Larry Graves about recently, and kind of a blow for Cheryl Walker, who we've said on this show seems as if she's trying to build a legacy for herself. I mean, even if she's ousted from her position as a county commissioner, she may wish to have something that she can look back on and say, look, I did that. At least she can speak with some pride instead of just being unceremoniously booted out the door. So perhaps she is legacy shopping, and perhaps this was her chance to do that. On the other hand, wouldn't the Illinois Valley love to have some kind of business in their area that's booming? Well, maybe not that kind of booming, but yes, of course they would. Now, look, there's always going to be somebody out in the Illinois Valley, everywhere, that says, no, I want it to revert back to the pleasantness. Oh, sorry to say that in a sing-song voice. I want it to revert back to the pleasantness of babbling brooks and babbling idiots. No, babbling brooks and environmental concerns. And I want to be able to hear the ducks as they quack or whatever. And I don't want any kind of business at all. Let's return it all back to prairie grass. Well, maybe not prairie grass, but you know what I mean. And then there are those that say, hey, I don't care if we're crushing rocks and rolling them through, some bedroom community somewhere else in the county. And you know that story. I want business at all costs. And then there's most of the people in between not quite sure about this. So what was happening is that it looked as if this was going to just kind of steamroller through. That's the perception that people out in the Illinois Valley had. Gee, I wonder why. And so I went there to videotape that because it looked like there was going to be a kind of a confrontation between Cheryl Walker and Larry Graves and a number of people in the community. And it would be interesting to see who showed up. Well, pretty much the only people that showed up besides the airport board were people who were questioning all this. Why do we need to do this? Why aren't they out in Eastern Oregon? Why would they choose this place? And the way it was explained to us is, well, they came to us and we have no choice. We have to let them do it. That didn't really set very well with most people. What do you mean we have no choice? Yes, they're aviation, and whenever they want to do anything, they can at an airport. And besides, people moved here and they know it's an airport. Yeah, but the people who are complaining are people who have been here for a long time. If someone's brand new and they move right next to the airport, well, I don't like any noise. Come on now, that's ridiculous. But that's not what was happening. And that's the way it's being played now. Well, I just have no patience with people who move near an airport. No. A number of people spoke and said, I've been here for 20 years. And I don't think this is the best fit for the community. And I want economic development, and I love Erickson, but maybe not this, with what could potentially be the Latos helicopter. So there was a deal where Erickson was going to come in, and they were going to do a test for the people so that they could hear what was going on and test for themselves. Seemed reasonable. Okay, then we're going to put this to rest. Is it really that noisy? So Larry Graves said, well, I'll inform everybody when they're coming out. Great. Well, I've been on and off the mailing list. It's odd. How do you get on the list and then off the list and on the list and off the list constantly for the last couple of years since Larry Graves has been the airport's manager? And maybe it's not him. Maybe it's somebody on the airport board. But being news guys, we would like to know when things are happening. And I got that initial email, and we'll let you know what day they're coming. And then that was the last I ever got. And I've said at every airport meeting I've gone to that I can recall, I want to be on the list. It's not doing any good. Okay, so that makes me a little suspicious, but okay, whatever. So people went out there with their own camera. I didn't know it was happening. We didn't know what was going to happen. And they videotaped this. Well, when the test came, this makes you suspicious. This is odd. When the test came, they didn't do any test of, like they said they were going to do, of lifting up a heavy weight, because that was the idea, that they were going to train helicopter pilots, very experienced helicopter pilots, to pick up these really heavy weights. And this potentially loudest helicopter in the world, I don't know, was going to be making the maximum noise, which is why they wanted to be there. Well, they didn't do that kind of test. Really? Why not? Even so, there were people there with a decibel meter, and they pointed at it, and they pointed at the helicopter, and they pointed at it. And there was at least one member of the airport board that knew enough to show up because they were notified at the last minute. And their readings said that it went way, way up over the limits. Larry Graves' version of it was, no, it didn't. It's this credibility gap again. And Cheryl Walker repeats, no, it wasn't, And so the people there said they jammed into the next meeting, and they said, this isn't going right. We don't like this. Are you listening to us? Well, yeah, we're listening to you, but really we got to do this, and there's no choice. Really, there's no choice. So what these people did is they contacted Erickson because they weren't being heard by the county commissioner and the airport's manager. And they said, look, we've got these doubts. So then Erickson started to get a little nervous, saying, we really would prefer not to go into a community where we're not welcome. And the people said that they made it clear to Erickson they were welcome, but not with this. So third meeting comes up. For the very first time that I saw, there were a group of people all huddled together. They were huddled together, it's the right word, who were supporters of this whole idea. It seemed a little too too late, because when Larry Graves came in and sat down, even before Cheryl Walker arrived, he started to read from a letter on his telephone from Erickson saying they're not coming due to opposition from members of the community. There are plenty of places for them, and they would not be coming. Well, Larry was not happy, buddy. He was not at all happy. And when Cheryl Walker arrived and she heard this, she was livid, because the message only came in an hour before the meeting. She was really angry. Now, she has since said, well, I wasn't rude to people and I didn't. Yes, she was. You know what she's like. Well, okay. She was not nice, and neither was Larry about, well, you've made your own bed now and no one will ever come out here, and this is the end of economic development. Since she's the economic development in charge of it, the liaison for that, and the airport, she's saying, well, now no one will come, and they'll find out. Gee, how will they find out, Cheryl? They're going to find out that the Illinois Valley doesn't want any economic development at all, and that'll be the end, and the word will get around and nothing good will happen. That was pretty bad. But the residents there were saying, hey, why are you being rude? No, I'm not being rude to you, but you just don't know what you're talking about, and these are lies. And okay, thought that was probably pretty much the end of it. Except now what's happening is that Larry Graves has gone on to KTVL and to the newspaper. Here is Grants Pass newspaper. Erickson no longer pursuing Ivy Airport lease. Larry Graves says, I wish to spank all the members of the local community who chased a world-class company out of the Illinois Valley. He wants to spank them? This guy's just an employee. Who the heck is this guy? Well, we know for sure he's operating under the instructions or the aegis or the protection or the encouragement of Cheryl Walker. Then Larry Graves goes on KDRV. KTVL does a story also. And oh boy, if I can find this. Come here. And here's the story from KDRV. And they're quoting Larry Graves. And Larry Graves is saying stuff like, the people out there are ignorant. Hey, Larry Graves, what are you doing? Why are you doing a media campaign? And who are you to do a media campaign? I mean, if it was Cheryl Walker, it'd be bad enough. But why is some county employee, doing a media campaign against the citizens of the Illinois Valley. Why are you doing that? So I'm going to read to you, and this will be the end of it. And then you can say, thank you very much, Dale, if you're still here. And I will tell you what are the kinds of things that Larry Graves is saying. So here's what he wrote. Erickson Aviation has informed the Josephine County Airport's manager, that's him, that it will no longer be considering a lease at the Illinois Valley Airport in support of their training activities. Erickson had considered leasing a small parcel of land on the IV Airport in order to store equipment, no, that wasn't all, and build a gravel helipad, they said a cement helipad, whatever, used during long line and heavy lift training. Larry's words. The local Illinois Valley community organizers discovered the lease discussions 3 months after they became public. Okay, not quite right. And when informed by airport management, that's him, that the proposed training flights were safe, legal, and appropriate, yeah, and had already been taking place for years, without anyone noticing or complaining, immediately began inundating Erickson, the county, and the FAA with formal complaints about the noise from the helicopters. There was no appreciable increase in the amount of noise or in the volume of training flights, but several dozen residents of the Illinois Valley were suddenly engulfed in a frenzy of fear, this is a county employee, and doubt about the damaging effects of noise. Many of them traveled 10 or more miles to the IV Airport to express their fear of the helicopter noise at subsequent meetings. Before the county had a chance to negotiate terms of a lease, Erickson sent the attached letter indicating that due to the ignorant and uninformed complaints of a small but vocal minority in the community, they were taking their lease business elsewhere. You know, when I was at that meeting and asked if I had anything to say, I said to the residents, you know, basically, you might be right, you might be wrong, but you've had your voice heard. And it did look like the county commissioners were just going to do this deal, and they were, buddy. Now, what you've done is you've gone to Erickson and you said, listen, we're residents here. We don't think this is a good idea. And Erickson changed the mind of the commissioners because they pulled out. The commissioners were going to do it despite what the people there thought. Now, Larry Graves is sending out emails to people saying there's plenty more people now that are flooding the internet with their positive comments, and maybe we can still get Erickson to come back here. And it's just really a small number of people who don't like this in the first place, and basically they're ignorant and uninformed, despite the meter readings that said maybe they weren't so ignorant and uninformed. The bottom line of this, finally, is that do the residents of a community have the right to say, you know, whatever our reasons are, we don't like this idea. I think the same as county commissioners saying, despite the fact that we've had 9 votes since 2000 saying we don't want a levy, we still feel that we ought to have a levy. I mean, they have their opinion. I don't think it's based on facts, but when the people tell them this is not what we want, do people have to justify everything? They do. They do justify it, but then don't call them ignorant. Don't call them a small vocal minority. They made their wishes known, and you're supposed to be their public servants. And as we've often said on this show, whether they're geniuses or knuckleheads, this is what they'd like. And stop throwing a fit. And don't be calling them names. And stop threatening them. And stop saying that, well, no, we're nice to them and we're not, when you're not. Stop it. They won. You lost. This is America. Get over it. Thanks for joining us tonight. Mike will be back tomorrow, and we will then cover the kind of stories that we wanted to do, but I'm hoping that some of this background will be helpful to you to understand the personalities behind some of this and the variety of ignorant people and not ignorant people who help make this decision. Thank you. Good night.